G'day guys and welcome to Aussie English. My objective here is to teach you guys the English spoken down under. So whether you want to speak like a fair dinkum Aussie, or you just want to understand what the flippin' hell we're on about when we're having a yarn, you've come to the right place. So sit back, grab a cuppa and enjoy Aussie English. G'day guys, welcome to the Aussie English Podcast, the number one podcast for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. Whether you want to understand what the flippin' hell Aussies are saying or whether you just want to speak like an Aussie using our slang or our accents, the Aussie English Podcast is the podcast for you. And remember guys, this podcast is brought to you by the Aussie English Classroom, an online classroom with materials designed to teach you Australian English even faster. And with all the bonus content to these expression episodes and interview episodes on the podcast, like quizzes, listening comprehension exercises, speaking exercises, and now the private Facebook group where you guys can chuck up your videos and say g'day and organize classes with each other. Anyway, guys, today is another interview episode, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Oliver G, a fellow Australian who lives in Europe. So Ollie moved over to Europe a few years back. He first went to Sweden, he learnt Swedish, and then he has since moved to France and is currently undergoing the difficult and arduous process of learning French. And he is the founder and host of the podcast, The Earful Tower. So you'll find out why it's called the Earful Tower shortly, but enjoy today's interview, guys. We chat about Europe, we chat about learning foreign languages, we have a bit of a yarn about accents, and what it's like for an Aussie to live in Europe. Anyway, guys, make sure you check out Ollie's podcast. The links will be in the description or in the transcript for this episode, and they'll also be mentioned at the end. But let's get into it. Man, Ollie, is it G? Ollie G or Ollie G?
G, that's it. That's exactly it.
Should have asked before we started, but welcome to the Aussie English Podcast.
I'm thrilled to be here.
You would be the first podcaster I think I've interviewed on this podcast.
Hey, look at that. We could talk in sort of code podcasting ways.
That's it. So I guess you're from the Earful Tower.
Yes.
Tell me about it. How did it start? What does it do? Give me the full story about you and the Eiffel Tower and living in Paris.
Sure. Well, the clue is in the name, right? So the Eiffel Tower is my attempt at being clever and play on wordsy kind of thing because, like you said, I'm in Paris where there's the Eiffel Tower. But obviously a podcast is audio, so we switch it to the Eiffel Tower. You think you're being clever. A lot of people don't get it. And you spend a lot of time explaining it. But the people who get it, you figure it's a pretty good sort of example of the show. It's a fun look at life in Paris, a little bit different. Not just the Eiffel Tower. It's like talking to people doing interesting things in Paris and using them and their expertise to help me understand France and the French people. So it's a bit of a journey, and everyone that's listening sort of learns with me. That's how it kind of...
How did it begin? How did you decide, did you just wake up one day and you're like, you know what, I'm going to become a podcaster?
Yeah. The truth is, when I started about a year ago, and I didn't even listen to podcasts at that point. But
that's an awkward position to start from.
Right? It's pretty stupid. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a mate that had a job at a radio station, and he was looking for shows to add to the radio, right? And he, because I was a journalist at the time, and he goes, "Look, man, will you do a news show?" And I said, "I'm not interested in doing a news show, but I'd like to do a kind of talk show." And I convinced him to do it, and I started putting it out on the radio, and it got kind of popular for him. So we switched it. Well, I decided to make it into a podcast, and that's when I started listening to other podcasts and hearing what worked and what was interesting. And luckily getting into this world that all your listeners are into, where you just, you're into listening to cool stories that people put a lot of effort into. And I mean, it just, the idea of doing a talk show, it's kind of, I wanted to figure out Paris and France. and getting the opportunity to meet people like authors and, TV stars or comedians. It's just a cool way to meet people. And I mean, as you know, man, like sitting down and sitting across from them in a room or whatever and chatting to them, I find it really interesting. It's cool.
Exactly.
So that's how it all kind of started, almost by accident, really. But there you go.
And so is it in English? Is it in French? Is it a bit of both? Is it in franglais?
It's my French is, I was going to say atrocious. It's not atrocious. But it's not good enough to do a podcast in.
Yeah.
So it's all in English, and
for now,
and I think I don't know. Like, I don't think I would put it in French because a lot of the people that listen to it are people abroad, and not French people. Like people in America or people in Australia even. There's a lot of Australian listeners. And if I started doing it in French, they'd all be confused. More confused than I'd be, I reckon.
Yeah.
So I think it'll stay in English for now.
So what did you do when you decided, okay, I want to start a podcast? How did you come up with your idea? And then what were the next steps for that? And how did you go about it?
Should I be? I feel like when I'm talking to you, you've got a stronger Australian accent than me. And
you've got a British accent, mate.
I tell you why. Speaking of accents, because I spent 4 years living in Sweden, right?
Okay.
And when I first moved there, I spoke like anyone else in Australia, and very quickly. And a lot of the Swedes, even though they speak brilliant English, they just didn't understand me.
No exposure, right?
Right. So I slowed it right down. And I think when you slow down the Australian accent, you lose the accent.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to France, it was the same thing. They'd speak, maybe even worse English than the Swedes.
Yeah.
So I spoke clearly, and I think that's what got rid of the accent, or maybe made it sound.
I always find that peculiar too, because I had a very strong accent at high school, or not strong, but stereotypical accent in high school. And then when I went to university, I moved to Melbourne, and all of a sudden I was surrounded by foreigners. 80% of the people there are from overseas, and my accent just dropped with regards to its sort of strength. The slang that I used, I had to get rid of. And it was so weird because it was kind of like a subconscious thing. I wasn't actively trying to do this, but it's funny that the mind tries to avoid misunderstandings. You try and stray away from any conversations where you constantly have to be like, oh, this is what I mean, that's the slang, this is my pronunciation.
I think that there's a little known language that I don't think a lot of people speak. I don't know what I'd call it, maybe like simple English. And it's this English that you have to speak when you're traveling, right? Like, let's say you go to, I don't know, Germany tomorrow. You see a lot of people, especially Australians, and they talk with this slang and stuff. Yeah. But they don't realize maybe that not everyone's, they don't even realize it's slang, So I think it's a real skill for people to know that you should speak a sort of almost dumbed down version, not dumbed down, but just clear, a simple English.
You have to hit standardized, right? Yeah. And
standardized, yeah.
You wonder if that's like a colonized, what would you call it? Like a colonized nation history kind of problem, right? Of everyone from British, English-speaking countries in the colonies, French ones, because obviously if you've got one country that is the only country that speaks that language, you're never going to have that problem.
Exactly.
But if there's English everywhere, you have to be aware that you can't just speak with the slang you use at home when you go. Even if I go to America, right, I can't just start blasting them with all the stuff I use every day because they'll just look at me like I'm speaking another language.
Exactly, and it's kind of a courtesy thing because people don't like to feel left out or stupid when they don't understand something. Yeah. But in my opinion, the people using the really crazy slang things, like you're being the one that's kind of stupid here. Tone it down so that we can all talk to each other,
Yeah. It's almost like you're the one that's in the boat paddling the wrong direction.
Exactly. Standardized English, I like it.
So
better than simple English.
What happens then now that you do? Because to me, you got on the podcast and I was like, okay, I was pretty sure he was Australian. Maybe he's British, and I just somehow got that wrong. Because I was
no.
Obviously, I heard of you. Yeah. But so do you come back to Australia, and do people give you a funny look, or does it take a while to come out?
Only when they see my face do I get a funny look. It's got nothing to do with. No, I don't know. To be honest, I'm not back in Australia so often. Like, it's been maybe, 8 or 9 or 10 years that I've been living in Europe.
Oh wow!
And I come back once every maybe 3 years or something.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. When I'm there, people don't tell me I talk. You know what? What's more common is when I'm in Europe or America or wherever, and people trying to guess where I'm from.
You get to screw with people.
No one ever guesses it,
Yeah.
but they always, when I say I'm Australian, they go, yeah, that's it, I knew it. I'm like, there's no way you knew it, because it's so someone can guess it. I like it. I like having a weird accent that makes it a bit different and unique, you know?
That's crazy. So were you learning other languages? Like, what made you decide to go to Europe, and obviously you spent time in Sweden before France?
Yeah, well, I had a Swedish girlfriend, past tense had. So I moved there with her, and I learned Swedish. Like, I learned it fluently, like legally fluently, like I could study in university there.
So now you can say, what is it, like, jag älskar dig? Is that it? Like,
that sounds Danish to me, but
I have no idea.
Similar. You said what it sounded like was like Borat saying "I love you." That's what it sounded like. What you said was the equivalent of like "I love you."
Yeah. I only know Icelandic. I'm learning Icelandic, but no Swedish. So that's why I'm like, I think it's Eki.
Right. No, it'd be like "Jag älskar dig" would be what it is. But
hey,
then obviously
you don't though, right? Like "Jag älskar dig" or
yeah. Okay, so in Icelandic maybe, in Swedish.
Gotcha.
Or in Danish or Norwegian, you say "jag inte älskar dig" or something. But in Swedish, it's a bit different. But anyway, speaking of love and falling out of love, I left there and then realized learning Swedish was absolutely useless in any other country in the entire world. Yeah. But I learned it and I can speak it. But then I moved to France and had to learn that one instead. So I don't know. I got... maybe that also made my accent weird. I don't know.
Did that prepare you, though? Having learnt Swedish, what was the process like? And then did that prepare you when you went to France to learn French?
Yeah, it was different because it's really interesting. In Sweden, they really encourage you to learn Swedish. Like, really, at the time that I was there, I'm not sure if they still do it, but they paid me to do these courses. Yeah, so I was really motivated to learn, and that's why I learned it. I learned it so quickly. I was jumping up ahead in levels to be the bottom of the class to try and get to the top and jump another level, because I had my eyes on the prize at the end, which was financial, as well as wanting to.
So you only got the money at the end, did you? You didn't get a during. You have to get to a certain point, did you? And then they were like, cash prizes.
Yeah, it was like The Price is Right or something. You had to get to the very end. But I was like, that was the carrot dangling in front of me, and I was like, I'm running for that carrot.
Far out.
But then coming to Paris, there's no financial motivation. To do courses and stuff, you have to pay for them. So it's almost the opposite.
Yeah, and I imagine they're pretty penny.
When I first got here, I signed up for some classes, the cheapest ones I could find, and it was outrageously boring. The French, as I understand, the French teaching system is quite. Some countries would see it as quite dated. Like, they just stand there at the front. They like to sort of teach at you. Yeah. And the teachers of young children have been criticized for like making the kids feel pretty much scared, like you're nervous to not know it. And honestly, even though I'm a grown adult, like there were times when I felt nervous sitting in the class when they'd be going around and he'd be like, Oliver, what's the subjunctive? Where's the subjunctive tense example here? And I'd be like, I don't know. He'd be like, oh, you don't know? And I'd be like, I got no idea. He'd be like, oh, you got no idea. Well, what do you think? And I'd be like, don't ask me. I'm scared. So I wasn't motivated.
You think that's the culture over there, do you?
I don't know. I didn't hang around to find out. I hated those classes. So I got out of it and tried to learn by doing 30-minute language exchanges with my neighbor from Grenoble. Oh, wow. And we'd do 30 minutes in English, 30 minutes in French. And we were both rubbish at our respective languages.
Well, that's good though, right? It gives you motivation.
Here's something you might find interesting about languages. Here in France, obviously Game of Thrones is popular everywhere, but it was popular here as well. And but they dub everything here, right?
That's the best part. Everything. That's the best part about learning French in Australia.
Right. But not for French people wanting to learn English, right? Game of Thrones is a specific example. It took them a while to dub it and put it on TV. Yeah. When everyone else who's addicted to it, maybe they're downloading it and getting it instantly. But all these French people that don't speak English, there's no point in downloading it because they can't understand. This neighbor from Grenoble, he started learning English because he was so addicted to Game of Thrones that he'd be forced to watch it without the dubbing or the
That's
subtitles.
awesome, though. That's such a good motivation, you know?
Except the only problem is he talks like a character from Game of Thrones. So instead of saying, like, let's go for a beer, he'd say, like, onward to the pub.
I think you play that up, you know, you'll do well. You'll at least get a few laughs.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so different ways to learn. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be in a class. That's what I took from it all.
And so how have you found it? Do you find it a difficult language compared to Swedish with regards to things like grammar, pronunciation? Because I've heard, and I sort of have a feeling that Swedish is a little easier for English speakers, right? With regards to at least pronunciation and grammar.
You're exactly right. Like, it's there's just so many rules and so many ways to get it wrong in French, and so many tenses. And Swedish is just very it's just very straightforward to learn. Like, and the pronunciation and stuff. Like, you can see. I mean, all languages are difficult to some degree, but there's someone's done a table of how difficult they are for English speakers to learn. And let's be honest, French and Swedish, they both kind of look like English anyway. Yeah. They're not even remotely as hard as, you know, Russian or Korean, which have whole different alphabets, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we can't complain, those of us who've chosen to learn Latin or Germanic languages, because they're way easier. I
think it comes down, though, to a lot of the time, that table is sort of a guide for, like, inherent difficulty. But then if you're so sort of disconnected with the language you're learning, like if you're forced to do it because your, you know, work says you have to, it's kind of like just go for the harder one that you're more passionate about, right? Because that can be, if you enjoy it, you know, like you were saying, if you've got the incentives there for Swedish, it's a walk in the park. But if there's none there for French and the culture sucks at teaching you, it can be a total nightmare.
I think you're exactly right, and I think a lot of people that move to Paris, and especially outside of Paris, in other parts of France where they speak less English, there's a real motivation, I think, to learn it because a lot of doors will open for you. And I don't just mean you'll be able to order a croissant in the bakery. I mean more like when you go interact with people, you get to do it on their sort of on their terms and see who they really are. So, I mean, you'll be able to do everything you want in English, but you're never really going to understand anything in terms of, like, the context of how the country works.
Exactly. That blew my mind, I think, once I learned French and understanding, oh, shit, I'm having a conversation with someone who doesn't speak English. And I've got over this barrier, and I'm sort of understanding their personality, cultural outlook and everything in the context of their own language. It was what?
And that's the thing. Me and you were having this conversation in our, I assume it's your mother tongue is English, Australian English. So we know exactly who each other, like, we know who we are. I know who you are. And even we can, like, it's much easier to make assumptions wrong or right, but we can figure out who we are pretty quickly. Because we're showing the exact version of ourselves who we are. But if me and you were to have this conversation in French, or if you were to talk to someone whose second language is English, you're never going to get the same connection to the same level, you know? It's a pretty interesting thing. It's pretty fascinating, I reckon.
I loved it. I got addicted. Once French was sort of in the works and I was at basic fluency, it was weird because I'd gotten past, you know, the beginner stages, intermediate stages. You get into advanced and you're kind of like, fuck, I missed the beginning stages of where everything was new and, like, you know, you didn't recognize words, and that's why I had to start another one, and I started learning Portuguese. And but it keeps going, and it's such a fun process, I think.
And how is it to learn Portuguese?
It's not too bad. It's just that the resources aren't there, at least for me, with regards to how I like to learn with podcasts and stuff. I probably haven't looked that hard. I just use Harry Potter, to be honest. I have that in like 7 different languages, and I've downloaded them all a long time ago and have them all there in Swedish, Icelandic, Italian. I'm just like, if I just go through and read, you know, book 1 to 7, I'm sure I'll have learned a language by the end, as long as I've got Google Translate there and I can hear it.
Yeah. But I love Harry Potter in French. A magic wand is called a baguette.
Yeah.
I love that.
The thing too that blew me away, I'm listening to it at the moment in Portuguese and in French, and the narrator in French is astonishing. He's amazing. Like the way...
Really?
Yeah, it's really weird. I never would have thought that I would have had this sort of depth of understanding just straight away at, you know, this guy's really good at oration, you know, just talking and the way he emphasizes bits, and he's music to listen to. Whereas the Portuguese guy, he isn't bad, but he kind of just stumbles through it word for word, and there's not really a lot of emotion in it. Whereas the French guy's always like, putting on voices and going up and down in tone, speeding up, slowing down, and it gives it a lot of colour.
That's so interesting because you're one of the few people in the world who you could potentially say, "Oh, Harry Potter, I prefer it in French."
There's probably a few of us, but
yeah, but I mean, like
no one else. You can't have this conversation with anyone else in Australia, at least.
Yeah, that's why you're one of the few people who can say it.
Did you find it strange too? I get English learners envy because it feels like for anyone who speaks another language as their first language, no matter what, when they start learning English, there's more resources available to them than there was in their native language. Whereas for us, it's the reverse, where you're going into a smaller set of resources. So it's like, I can imagine you as an English learner, you have this massive incentive because the internet is in English. Every movie that anyone knows, is in English. Every TV show, it's all in English. And so it's, for me, I had to spend hours looking for top 10 French TV shows and then go through and be like...
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never come across English learners envy, but I don't envy anyone that's setting out to learn English because it's a beautiful language, but it is so complicated.
Yeah.
So complicated. And even the Swedes who speak such fantastic English, even the best of them will still make mistakes and give themselves away as a foreigner. And and it becomes almost funny because they're so good at English, and then they make just the smallest mistake, and you're like, well, you still haven't mastered it. It's almost impossible to master. You know what I mean?
Can you talk about that for a bit? Because I was going to say you're totally right. And it's funny because I meet a lot of people who say English isn't that hard. Our language has way more difficult grammar. Like my Estonian housemate was always like, English is easy, Estonian's difficult, but he learnt English from when he was 2. But it is funny that it is relatively simple in certain areas, but it's extreme difficulty in other areas. For instance, spelling. So how do you find that, and what are your thoughts on it? Why do you think English is difficult?
I think English is difficult because it's so big, and it's based on, and it's just, as I understand, it was made of all these different languages, and it's so quick to adapt things from other languages, and as a result, it's just so wildly irregular. We've all seen these things. Things like, I can think of a few examples. The things like, the O-U-G-H, how you can pronounce it, cough, tough, through, thorough, bow. That's just stupid, obviously. That's stupid. And anyone learning it, the only way to learn it is to learn the words individually. There's no rule. Whereas in Italian, you could, especially you or me, could learn to speak Italian and read it out loud within a day or two because it always follows the rules. Even where you put the stress. It's like you put the stress on the second last syllable or something every time, So it's like Maria, Conditori, or whatever like that, Whereas there's nothing like that in English. And another example that comes to mind I saw was, that thing I before E except after C. You know that? That you ever repeat. And I saw on a TV show that there are more exceptions to that rule than things that follow it. There's just so, even just words like science, which has S-C-I-E, so it's I before E after a C. There's just, so there's so many exceptions to it, they've stopped teaching that in schools now, apparently. It's so irregular like that I just can't, I don't know how anyone could master it. And what I was saying, sorry, in terms of giving it away, the things that the Swedes, the mistakes that they do are really little, but agreeing plural or singular things and getting that mixed up. So saying there are a bunch of us at this shop which are closing or something like that.
Okay, gotcha,
That might sound odd, but maybe it wasn't the perfect example, but they think, okay, I've got to match the final word with the plural bit at the start, things like that. And you just hear it and you go,
The funny thing is, though, we make those errors too. I would say there's a group of us and what's an example? There's a big group of people who, and when you talk about a group of some plural,
exactly.
But you should be using the singular. The group is big, or the group is, but then you pluralize it or vice versa, and that's just a natural mistake that people seem to make all the time now.
But that can even be complicated for people who are very advanced native English speakers. Like in journalism, you see a lot of headlines where it would say, for example, let's say a company, let's say Bunnings, right? So Bunnings is a good example because it sounds plural, but it is a company, so it's singular. Yeah. So if you say Bunnings is expanding, whereas a lot of people think that a company, because there's a bunch of people working there and it's a group, Bunnings are expanding. Like the correct answer should be Bunnings is expanding, but it sounds wrong. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's it. For example, you could say everyone at the company are great or something instead of everyone at the company is great, because you're thinking plural instead of singular. Yeah.
Not to mention none and no one, which gets people even more confused, because then it's, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And if anyone doesn't know, Bunnings is a warehouse. I don't know if you got listeners that are in Australia.
Bunnings, knowing it's a warehouse, yeah.
Yeah. It's a minefield. Like I said, I don't envy anyone learning it. I feel so grateful that it's my first language.
Do you have any advice for people learning English, like especially Swedish people or French people? Have you come across common errors or even just tactics or ways for learning it that sort of help?
Yeah, I think the best way to learn any language, in my own experience, and it must be the same for English, is to put yourself in a position where you need to speak it. So reading in a book, or like a lot of French people, they study English at school and they study it all the way till they're an adult. And then you meet them and you say, hey, do you speak English? And they say, no, because they're so nervous because they've never used it, right? Yeah. So my tip would be, and I'll give you an example. I remember when I was in Swedish and I first or second class, they taught us how to say, what's the time? Or whenever, a couple of classes in. So I went out there and I checked my watch just to make sure I knew the time, and then I hit it, and then I just walked up to people on the street and I said, what time is it? And I learned, like, I knew it was 10 to 2 or whatever, but like 5 people in a row all answered it in a different way. Yeah. Whether they said something like, check my phone, or, oh, it's earlier than I thought, or it's 10 to 2, or it's nearly 2. And I just heard them all, and I didn't understand half of it, but I knew the rough answer because I looked at the clock. But the point is, like, I'd gone out there and done it in a way that I had to be involved in it, rather than just learning it in class 2 and then never using it until the end of the term and then going, how do you say that again?
Well, that comes at it too from a memory perspective. As soon as you learn something new, you should go out and use it instantly, even if it's just talking to yourself. But I totally know what you mean, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I have to overcome with students a lot of the time, is trying to encourage them to go out and actually use the language. Like, just, I think, changing their perception of mistakes and thinking, the more mistakes I make, the better I am. The more I'm advancing, the more that's a sign that I'm increasing my, English abilities, as opposed to, oh my God, I don't want to make a mistake because I'll look like an idiot. It's kind of like, dude, go look like an idiot. It's for your own good. Do it. Trust me. Yeah.
That's the ultimate tip. You will look like an idiot. And I saw a really cool thing the other day. It said, never mock someone's accent, because foreign accent, because it's a sign of bravery that they've dared to learn a new language.
Exactly.
And it's totally right. Like, what? Like, how embarrassing that you think to mock someone, but like, if they've got a French accent, they've learned a whole language and they're taking the time to talk to you.
That irks me. That really pisses me off so much, especially in Australia. And we can probably talk about language learning in Australia a bit, but it seems like there are, and it's probably the same in Britain and America, I would imagine, and a lot of other countries, but there are a lot of people in Australia who seem to always have that attitude of, fucking learn English. Like, why can't you speak English properly? You've been learning, like, come on, speak my language. And you're like, at least my reaction is always, so how good's your French? Do you want to speak in Portuguese? How's your Chinese? Like, let's go,
It's baffling that anyone would be like that, and especially, I think if these kind of people who, sound like racist people to me, but if these kind of people can't get their head around it, like, go and culture yourself and learn a bit of a language and realize just how wildly difficult it can be. Yeah. And hopefully realize how enjoyable and how much it can open you up to stuff. But then get a bit of context and then stop criticizing people about their accents. If people criticize me about my accent in Swedish or French, like, I would just be like, are you kidding me? I'm doing my best.
First world problems. Me? Is this the only thing that you can complain about?
Yeah. Yeah, focus on what I'm saying and let's talk about that, or focus on helping me get something correct. But like, let's not focus on the accent, because that's the exact reason that people get scared to learn a new language.
So what advice would you give people who think that they have an incredibly strong accent in any language that they're speaking?
I'll tell you exactly. I've got the perfect advice that one of my guests on my show gave me, and it was really cool. He was like a 75-year-old guy from England that I just bumped into randomly on the street one day. And I said, I got a radio show I'd love to have, because he lived in Paris for 50 years as an expat.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I'd love to hear your tips for other expats and stuff like that. It ended up being one of the top episodes of the whole season. And he sat down with me and I said, what should I do about French and my accent and stuff? And he said, listen, and this is the tip that I'm giving to you now. He goes, embrace that you are different, because it opens doors for you. Firstly, let's say you go to a job interview with 20 French people. If I go to a job interview with 20 French people and it's all in French, I'll be the one where they can go, the guy with the Australian accent or the guy with the British accent or whatever I have, and I'm immediately separated from them.
Yeah.
Whether I'm more talented or not, it's just a way to be different. And remembering that when I speak English, I have an accent, maybe not so wildly strong, but I have an accent anyway. So I have an accent when I speak French and Swedish. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. That's just who I am. It's a part of who I am. So the tip is embrace it. And if you're French, especially French people always think that they have like a too strong accent. Who cares if it's too strong? You're a French person. You're French. So just speak it and get on with it. And like, it's interesting to talk about language, but when you're out in the streets, just get on with it.
Yeah.
Do what you have to do. And
I think that's it. You need to get to the point of being understood, and anything more is a bonus.
Yeah, true. Plus, you're interesting. Like, it's a cool story that it'll help you learn by having to explain that story a million times. And like, when I moved to France, I always love it when people would talk to me about language and where I'm from, because it's the conversation I practice the most. Yeah. And it would get me into the conversation, rather than if I met them and they said something like, pretty excessive strikes going on for these labor reforms, then I would panic. You know? But when they say to me things like, oh, is that an accent? Yes, I'm Australian. Then I'm in I'm just going through emotions. And then maybe we'll get to the labor reforms and maybe we could have a go at it. But at least I'll feel that I've talked for 10 minutes in French before switching to English. You know?
That's a good point. And I did I think it was a video or a podcast episode a while back talking about, I had a small book that was tips on learning a foreign language and how to immediately improve it. And one of them was take control of the conversation by responding to questions or asking questions, because as soon as you do that, you're keeping the discussion in your realm. But as soon as you shut down and stop answering, the other person has to start working and guessing and bringing things up, and you've automatically lost control of where the conversation's going to go.
Yeah. Even if it, I think it's, on top of that, I think it's quite good or advisable to stop someone and say to them, like I've been doing it a bit lately, I just go, like I say in French, I go like, whoa, you sure speak French quickly, you know? And then they're always like
That's clever. Like you don't even have to ask them to slow down because it's inferred.
Yeah. So there's so much comes out of it. Firstly, they'll slow down, which is the main thing. Secondly, they'll realize like that I say with.
Sorry, it broke up there for a sec. What did you say? Sorry.
I said when you say that, when you tell them that they speak quickly, it works to your advantage because they know that you're having a laugh with them, so it kind of breaks the ice a bit. Second, most important, it slows them down, which is what you're after. But third, it's a conversation point. They can go like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize I do that. Where are you from? Okay, you know, so you stop them from breaking away into what you just said, like a stream of too fast French or whatever language it is that you can't keep up with. It's a pretty good one. It's a bit cheeky, but
it's clever. It's clever. I'd recommend that the listeners here use that. Definitely go out there and next time someone's talking too fast, just be like, "Wow, you speak really quickly. It's impressive." You know.
Yeah. That would work. If someone said that to me, I'd be like, "Oh my god, sorry." Like
exactly. It puts you on the back foot, right? You're like, "Oh man, sorry." You know, like no worries.
Yeah, there's one of my tips. I did it to a French woman the other day in the bar, and I didn't want her to switch to English, but she just switched to English as a result. And I was like, I don't mind, I'll let her switch to English. But usually they'll just speak slower.
That tends to be another English learner envy issue that I have is that pretty much no matter who I speak with in French or Portuguese, their English is going to be better than my Portuguese or French, respectively. And they switch to that, or as soon as they can tell, oh, you speak English, bam, and you're just like, God damn it, everywhere I go. Is it like that in France for you speaking French? Do you get people saying, Anglais, c'est plus facile, like it's easier, English.
I get it. Or like even today, I went to Starbucks. I was with another English person. We were speaking in English, and the first guy says, "What do you want?" I order and everything, and he says, "What's your name?" They put the name on it. I even said like Oliver, like I did at French.
Yeah.
And then the next girl who'd sort of heard and seen everything, she goes, "That'll be €5" in English, and like they like the chance to switch to English. Yeah. But I have a tip for you. Like this instance, it didn't work because I'd been talking English with the woman next to me. But if that ever happens to you again in France and you know you're not going to see him again, or in Portugal, and they switch to English all of a sudden, like if you go, oh, you speak too quickly, and they switch to English, you respond and you say something like, sorry, I don't understand you, I'm from Poland or Russia.
Yeah.
It's a massive gamble because if they speak Polish, then you're absolutely wrecked. But often they won't, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I'll speak slower for you. And then you stick in.
Or you can just screw with them and be like, I'm kidding, man. I speak English, it's fine.
Yeah, that's really, I think humor is really important. If you can, even if you know, maybe you don't use humor as a sort of tool in your daily life, just using these kind of sort of tips with a little sort of wink in your eye, it's a way of relieving that tension that a lot of people feel when they're trying to speak a foreign language and they get feeling that they're lost really quick.
That's it's a good way to I try and encourage people to as well. They're always like, can I say this slang? Can I say this? And I'm like, man, if anyone has the license to do so inappropriately, you know, not to mention if you do it correctly, but if you make a mistake, people aren't going to, you know, they're not going to care. They're going to be like, look, you probably shouldn't have said that, but we'll give you a pass. So I'm always like, just go to town, man. G'day, mate. How's it going? No whackers. You know.
It's also a very respectful and polite thing to do to your host country that you care enough to learn their slang or their you know, go off the textbook a bit. I was sitting in a bar recently with a bunch of people, and there was a French guy, and we maybe were speaking English or French, doesn't matter, but I'd learned that day this random French phrase. I can't even remember what it means, but I think it means like it's ridiculous or something like that.
What is it? Can you say it for me?
The phrase is ça me fait une belle jambe, like ça me fait une belle jambe.
Okay, yeah. Jambe. Which is effectively gives me a beautiful leg or something, right?
Exactly right? And I think it means that's crazy. It doesn't matter what it means. It means that's crazy or that's good or I don't want to do it, whatever. It's not logical in any case. But like I said before about the time, I'd learned that day, and I was like, I'm going to use that tonight and see how it goes down.
Yeah. So
we're all sitting around this table, and someone suggested doing something. I think it means like that irritates me, whatever. And I go, I sat back and I go, ah oui, mais ça me fait une belle jambe, something like that. Yeah. And everyone just looked at me, and this one French guy from Brittany, he stood up and walked around the table and kissed me on the cheek and said, thank you so much, and then walked back and sat down. Yeah. And I was like, it's so appreciated to make that effort.
Exactly.
Even though I can't remember what it means, it was just that idea of learning something, trying it, and showing them like, yeah, I'm invested in you and your country, and I want to make the most of it.
I think too, people feel an instant moment of like, this guy understands me more because he's picked up on the slang. He's obviously getting into the culture a lot more. I feel like I'm closer to him now, you know. And I have those moments with foreigners who might be from Spain or something. If they use slang with me and they speak pretty good English, I'll be like, wow, okay, I feel like we're here. Whereas I could have an American come up to me and speak American English with no slang, no understanding, and I'd feel like, okay, we're not as close, you know. Like,
I'm with you. There's a comedian in England. I don't know if you watch panel shows in English, and I can't remember his name, but it's Henning something. He's German, and he speaks with a very strong accent, almost like a kind of Borat level. But he speaks impeccable English and uses all these phrases. It's like he got a phrase book from 1960s Cockney or something, and he just uses them in this wild German accent. And it's like he would say things, even just like what, that makes a pretty penny or something, but he'll be like, that makes a pretty penny, like that. And you're like, wow, they use get it, man. Like, that's so cool that he's made his career as an unusual comedian in England. So good for him.
That's
crazy.
He gets it. Far out, man. Well, before we finish up, I should ask you what is it like being an Australian in Europe? What are the biggest cultural differences? What are the things that stick out that made you think, what the hell, as an Aussie in Europe?
I think the cultural difference that I've noticed the most compared from Australia and Europe is that Australians are very relaxed and open and quite friendly and small talky and don't take themselves too seriously, which I really like. And that's kind of how I am. And a lot of people in Europe aren't the same. And I thought about it a lot. And one thing I've sort of agree with that I've heard is that, especially in the big cities like Paris, people are really crowded in with each other, and it makes them have no privacy often. So they value their privacy more. So they don't care to have small talk all the time, or they don't care to help the neighbor move in because they're like, look, So I found that really hard when I moved to Sweden, that people didn't want to give me a nod in the street kind of thing. I thought they were really cold, but it's just the way that people are here in the big cities,
I feel like that's the same sort of thing everywhere, though, right? Like I went to. Have you heard of a place called? Now I've forgotten the name of it. It's a small island, Lord Howe Island. I went out off Sydney, about 500 kilometres into the ocean, 1,000 kilometres, I don't know. There's like 400 people that live there. And the moment you get there, everyone's waving. They're like, what's your name? Where are you from? In the street, you're riding your bike or driving a car, and they're like, g'day. Yeah. And it was so weird coming from Melbourne with 4 million people where you just don't do that with strangers. And I think it's almost there's just people everywhere all the time. So it's not really you're not likely to bump into the same person. And
sure. It could be a city thing, but still in Melbourne, I still think if you're in Melbourne and you walked into, I don't know, let's say McDonald's or a department store, like you're likely to feel a friendly connection from them.
So you don't get that in Europe, even if you walk into a store?
You can get it, but not the same. Like it's noticeably different. And a lot of people meet me and they'll say like, oh yeah, like I know you're Australian because you're friendly or something like that. So it sounds quite a negative thing to say about Europeans, but it's not meant to be that.
I've got some Estonian friends, and they're like, it's so weird, like coming to Australia, everyone smiles, and they don't make jokes and like end them like this.
Yeah,
and they were like, you know how you know who's a foreigner in Estonia, and it's that they want to talk to you.
Yeah,
and they
say in Sweden that if someone smiles at you on the metro, that they're either drunk or American. Like, so I don't know. That sounds like a pretty negative review that I just gave Europe and Europeans, but obviously, like there's a lot of positive things.
I think there's a lot of history in that too, though, right? It's tied in with post Second World War era and the USSR, and it's cold. Australia's pretty easygoing. Everyone has a good life, and everyone's your mate. And I think we've come through a lot of issues and had to kind of band together and have that mateship culture side of things.
It's true, and I've got that in Paris that I never had in Sweden. Is I got a lot of Australian friends here, whereas when I was in Sweden, in Sweden I wasn't interested in meeting Australians because I was like, I could have met them at home.
Were there many of them there?
In Sweden there's like 3,000 Australians scattered around, so they're findable. But I was like, I got a Swedish girlfriend. I got a job. I can speak Swedish. I don't need you guys. Plus, we're not so unique if we all hang out together. But then when I came to France, I came without a French partner, without speaking good French. And when I met Australians, I was like, we help each other. Oh God, how do you sort out your tax return? Who am I going to get that? So we're all like, I'll help you in. It's quite tough. So we end up sort of banding together in a really sort of close and strong way. And I really appreciate it, having Australian friends here.
Have you had to try and leave that behind, though? The more advanced you want to kind of get in French? Is there sort of
No, but you just splice them in with French friends as well and all hang out together. It makes for an interesting melting pot.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Man, well, we should probably finish up there. I think I've almost kept you for 3/4 of an hour. How can people find out more about you, Oliver?
Yeah, well, if they want to listen to another podcast, obviously when they're finished listening to yours for the week, they should head over to the Earful Tower, so EARFUL. And it's just I don't know. It's on Facebook. It's all over the place. If you Google it, you'll find it, and it's just similar conversation to what we had, but with the main real guest every week is Paris, and just exploring Paris through other people's experiences and expertise. That's it, basically.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Oliver G. from the Eiffel Tower. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. All right, guys, so that was the interview with Ollie G from the Eiffel Tower. Remember that you can check out his podcast via theearfultower.com, TheEarfultower.com. You can find the Eiffel Tower on iTunes. You can find his Facebook page, obviously, on Facebook. Just search for the Eiffel Tower and you will find him. Aside from that, guys, remember, if you want the bonus content for today's interview episode, if you want to challenge yourself and upgrade your English by focusing on a 5 to 10 minute excerpt from today's interview, then get in the Aussie English classroom. You can enroll. It's just $1 to try it for 1 month for 30 days. And today's episode has a whole bunch of listening comprehension questions in the form of a quiz, as well as a vocab breakdown where we go through all the more difficult vocab in the excerpt of this interview that we study. And remember, when you sign up, you don't just get access to this interview, you get access to everything. There's a whole bunch of other interviews. You can go through all the expression episodes that I do, and there's a bunch of other material on there too, specifically designed to teach you Australian English. Anyway, guys, I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll chat to you soon. See ya. G'day, mate. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Aussie English Podcast. If you wish to support the podcast and help me keep bringing you content, you can do so via my Patreon page. Remember, it's my mission here at Aussie English not only to help you understand Australian English, but to speak it like a native. If that's your goal, make sure you enroll in the Aussie English Classroom, guys, where you'll get all the bonus content for today's episode designed to improve your English even faster. Have a ripper of a day, and I'll see you in class.